To call the regular City Commission meeting of Tuesday, August 19th, 2025 to order, and ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Olsman.
Present.
Commissioner Elder.
Present.
Commissioner Steinhardt.
Present.
Mayor Paul present. Commissioner Rozelle is excused this evening. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We don't have any communications. Do we have any elected officials in the room? Seeing none. We're going to move on to proclamations. We have one proclamation this evening, and that is for the Lucencephaly Awareness Day proclamation. Whereas lucencephaly is a rare gene-linked brain malformation causing the brain to have less or no ridges and folds, making it appear smooth. It is estimated about 1 in 100,000 individuals are born with this condition. Whereas people living with this condition may also suffer from hypertonia, epilepsy, swallowing disorders, developmental delays, and more. Whereas addressing the complex medical needs early in life is imperative to helping families successfully care for their children at home. The need for more education, awareness, and support for families is desperately needed. Whereas it is appropriate that one day each year should be set apart from the rest and be known as Lucencephaly Awareness Day, this day shall be on September 8th. Whereas the Lucencephaly Foundation, Inc., a nonprofit charitable organization, wants to help support these individuals through their continued efforts of empowering families and educating communities. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Robert Paul, do hereby proclaim September 8th to be known in the City of Huntington Woods as Lucencephaly Awareness Day, and urge our citizens, patients, caregivers, medical professionals, and all agencies and organizations interested in supporting these families to unite on that day in observance of such exercises. Proclaim this 19th day of August, 2025. Okay, next up is public participation. And this is for the public to address the commission for an item that's not on the agenda. Please come forward.
Zach, Huntington Woods resident, and I'm also the adopted gardener for the gazebo garden in Mary Kay Davis Park. I am here to talk about how distraught I am about the gazebo garden. For the audience and those that don't know, it's really a very special place. Unfortunately, the Jacobs family lost a family member a little over 10 years ago, and the gazebo was donated by Gilda Jacobs' best childhood friend and her husband, who happens to be the son of Mary Kay Davis Park. And when that happened, Andy and Helene Zach, we decided, we're gardeners, that we were going to adopt the garden and planted all of these hydrangea bushes. And the close friends of the Jacobs family contributed to plant those bushes. So I've been managing that garden for 9-10 years. I'm very distraught because, first of all, 2.5 bushes were stolen this year. And we checked with the landscaping company. They didn't pull them out, but you can see that they've been dug out. And yeah, it's disturbing that someone would take bushes from one of our county city parks. Secondly, I'm really upset about the condition of the property. One of the things that I do when I go regularly water is I'm constantly picking up trash. The good news is I'm glad the gazebo's being used, but it's gotten beyond me. A couple of weeks ago, there was about an inch of grass clippings on the cement. And I don't know who's cutting the grass, but they obviously didn't sweep it. So I tried to hose it down with the hose, and the hose isn't installed properly, so there's not enough pressure, and I couldn't do that. I'm constantly picking up garbage. 2 days ago, there was broken glass, and I didn't have gloves, so I couldn't clean that up. So what I'm asking, and I'm coming in with a problem, I'd love to see some signage there, recognizing that it's a special memorial garden, that people respect it. I'd love to see some signage about trash, keeping it upkeep. I'd love to see an additional waste can near the garden. It's not that far away, but obviously people aren't taking the time to walk over to Hendry, where it curves around, to throw away the garbage. And I'd love to see that we would have some more maintenance, that I'm not the only one picking up garbage there. So I hope that you'll look into this matter and support this wonderful garden.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Can you tell us where's the gazebo garden? What? Where's the gazebo garden? Where's the garden?
It's in Mary Kay Davis Park, which is at York and Hendry and Lincoln. It's really a lovely park.
Thanks.
My name is Gail Kovac, and I live at 10865 Borgman. I'm concerned with after the city tore out all the trees up and down Scotia, and I know there's trees going elsewhere, and they put all new trees in. I didn't see any watering going on, like after a week, 2 weeks. So I called the city, and the city said, well, that's the residents' responsibility to do the trees. Well, if I would have known that, I would have told them not to put a tree there. I'm tired of cleaning up after the trees, first of all, because they were dead, so I'm glad the tree is gone. But I've looked at other cities. I asked her, I said, don't we have, because I've lived in Huntington Woods my whole life. I've lived at this address for 43 years. They always maintain their trees. We stopped maintaining them. It's recently they have been maintaining them. There used to be, when they planted them, we had a water truck, I remember, going around. She said, we don't have a water truck anymore. So I asked her, I said, well, how about bags? I mean, I don't have a hose, and I'm 70 years old, and I'm not taking a bucket and watering a tree. I'm sorry. There should be bags. There's bags, and I saw them up and down Oak Park Boulevard. They planted all kinds of trees, and there's bags. I could at least take a little watering can and fill the bag up. But we have all these trees you've planted, and I walk around and I see there's so many of them dying. And we did get a letter after about 4 weeks that it's the residents' responsibility to water the trees. So I would just ask that you planted all these trees, all this expense, that you can have an expense and buy water bags that you could put on all these brand-new trees to water them. So I ask that you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Commissioners. I'm Steve Gold, live at 26764 York. I'm here once again to remind you that coming up in April of next year, April 5th to be specific, is the 100th anniversary of the city of the village of Huntington Woods coming into existence, followed 6 years later by the transition to a city. But on April 5th, 1926, we took land identified just as a subdivision before that time, and we filled out ballots, and we did all kinds of things according to the laws of the state, and petitioned to become a village. And that was the first identity of Huntington Woods as more than just a subdivision, an arbitrarily named subdivision. So it would be appropriate to acknowledge that fact somehow. And I suggested before, and I'll suggest it again, that beginning another revision of the history of Huntington Woods would be a good way to mark the occasion. The one edition that was done was made 17 years after the original book was written by Mr. Ballard. It has now been 32 years since that edition was done, and a lot has happened in 32 years. Plus, we would probably be interested in revising some of the language that's in the original book when you look at it through a contemporary lens. So I've been in touch with the county and with their excellent cooperation. I've recovered a lot of the original documents and materials that were in the 1926 and also in the 1932 transitions. We have the names of people who filled out the petitions and voted in the original elections. And those are really the founding mothers and fathers of our city. And it would be a good project to identify those folks. I did look to see if there was any of the same last names still living in the city now. There are not. But their descendants are probably out there, and it would be a reasonable thing to do to seek them out and to honor them. We couldn't find them all, we wouldn't even need to, but there's probably a dozen or two that could be found pretty easily. So I bring that to your attention, and I hope that some effort will be made by the city to remember its earlier history, without which we would not be here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Susan Considine. I'm not giving out my address because last time I had public comment, the city came on my property without my permission and took pictures on my property without my permission. So first I want to thank you for the good job done on Scotia. I was landlocked on one of the dead ends and it went very smoothly, so I appreciate that. Almost 3 years ago today, on August 16th, Commissioner Olsman moved to adopt our master plan, and it was seconded by Commissioner Roselle. And I FOIA'd the city because I was specifically interested in 3 action topics in the master plan. I wanted to know what the city had done in terms of action topics number 48, 13, and 12. They are related to stormwater, but this is still more of a master plan issue. And so my FOIA came like this. And these are my sticky notes. I had to do all the work to find everything. It was really not clear. The master plan requires, it says should be revisited. Should means should be done by the Planning Commission on an annual basis to determine what has been accomplished and review priorities. You did get a handout. If you didn't get it, there's something here about that. And I just don't see any action being taken. 48 has made it to the high priority list, and 12 is medium. And stormwater runoff was a high priority of all the residents. So nothing's being done, as far as I can see, on an education awareness campaign. However, maybe inviting Mr. Brickell here tonight will be the start of that. And also, we're creating handouts for residents here to be informed. So I'd also like, I hope this is relief from room rental policy tonight to talk about stormwater. I'm hoping when Mr. Brickell speaks that he can talk a little bit about the important role that drainage reviews on a site plan how important they are for stormwater management that NOAC and Frous does. Also, if you look at those action plan topics, I did see a lot of discussion about redirected downspouts. And to me, a redirected downspout means nothing if it doesn't result in redirected water. So I hope maybe he can talk about that. I hope he can talk about how driveways really function like huge downspouts, maybe one if they can run it all the way from the back, and then maybe a few more if they split it and run some to the front, some to the back. Hoping he can talk about runoff coefficients, and there'll be more to say afterward. But, you know, I would really encourage all of you to go on Google Maps, aerial view, and just scroll around in the R1D, R1E, R1C areas and look at some backyards and go like, whoa, how'd that one get by? Just look. And the great thing is now that a lot of records are on BSA Online, so you can look, was a permit pulled for that basketball court? Was a permit pulled for that patio? So there's a lot that we can look at, and I just would like to make sure that the city of homes does not become a city of ballooning homes, shrinking yards, and leaky property lines. So thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Ronnie Nantis. I live at 10795 Vernon. I recently discovered new regulations regarding holding block parties. I was told that the new regulations are not much different than the old ones, that they were needed for the safety of the residents and because some people were abusing the privilege of a block party by holding graduation parties in their stead. I agree that the safety of Huntington Woods residents should be paramount, though in the past 45 years that I've been involved with block parties, I've never heard of any tragic occurrence happening due to a block party. I also agree that those who abuse block party regulations should be penalized. I don't, however, think that the people that are holding block parties for the purpose of neighborhood community and entertainment should be the ones who suffer. The difference between the original regulations and what we have now is not minimal as far as I'm concerned. To have to go and get a petition signed by the people on my block for them to say it's okay for us to have a party, I think is a little extreme. The charging of $50 to have the street blocked off, I find to be extreme. I've held block parties where money doesn't even have to be involved. We do potluck, we put a grill out, everybody takes care of themselves. I would not want to have to go around and say, I have to collect money from you because it cost me $50 to get the permit. I think that the new regulations on block parties should be reviewed again, and that maybe if we had a permanent city manager who was more attuned to what's going on in the city and what the residents of the city appreciate, we would not have overkill that we have. Thank you.
It's a perfect time to come up following that, because I was here when it was discussed last month, when it was adopted, on block parties. Gail Linden, 25840 Concord Road. I will jump right to the block party item. It was very well stated before, but one of the things, I don't know how you can have a block party and close it off for residents if you can't put tables in the street for people to gather. And yet, the new ordinance reads, streets must remain clear for emergency access. No picnic tables, inflatables, or obstructions allowed. Well, how do you gather everybody? On a lawn?
on one driveway, you can't get everybody there. The road is closed because you want it to be a block party, and you want to be in the street, and that's why it's closed. The fire department managed to come in with a truck for the kids and get out. They arrange it and such. So I'll just leave it at that. The other point that I want to raise is that, and I know you're discussing later, and I'll get to it later, on room rental rates, but you adopted a room rental policy last time. There were 13 people that spoke about room rentals. It's a little annoying to, see in the minutes that we voiced our objection. That's all it says. We said specific things. If somebody doesn't pull up the video and see what was said or know about it today, all it does is say, noted objection to the, policy. I'd like to have a little bit, I don't think you need to take everybody's exact words, but a little bit more in there. I objected, for example, to the rates or scale or something like that, but just noted objection, and who we are and our address, I think we need to do a better job of that. Thank you.
My name is Jessica Downey, and I live at 13160 Kingston. On July 29th, a Huntington Woods resident launched a petition titled Preserve Vale Jones Park for the Huntington Woods Community, which was presented along with a privately created park rendering to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board on August 12th, and I believe some of you received copies of that as well. This petition was circulated primarily through private text message threads among specific groups and was not broadly shared with the wider Huntington Woods community, limiting the opportunity for balanced representation of all perspectives. Organizers reported nearly 200 resident signatures and urged the Parks and Rec Advisory Board to give the petition strong consideration. The petition claims to represent Huntington Woods, yet even its own data tells a different story. Despite the petition requiring signers to attest to living in Huntington Woods, my review confirmed at least 22 signatures from non-residents. And the petition itself shows that over 31% of the signers don't actually live in Huntington Woods at all. That calls into serious question how accurately this petition reflects our community's voice. Why should people who don't live or pay taxes here have any influence over the future of Vale Jones Park or any city park? While visitors from other communities are, of course, welcome in our parks, only Huntington Woods taxpayers should have a say in their futures. Given the petition's skewed data and its misrepresentation of widespread community support, I formally request that it be excluded from consideration in any city decisions regarding Vale Jones Park. As you all know, Vale Jones Park has faced challenges for more than a decade, and I have worked persistently to push for meaningful improvements that would benefit both nearby residents and visitors alike. For the first time in nearly 10 years, it finally felt like positive progress may be underway. And yet, once again, a small group has come out of the woodwork to stir up controversy, halting that progress and pulling the community back into the same cycle of division. Too often, efforts like this lean on emotion rather than facts, creating setbacks rather than solutions. The recent Parks Tour on June 16th was a chance for meaningful dialogue, yet none of the park's most fervent supporters chose to attend. In fact, besides a few senior residents, I was the only resident in attendance. It was a missed opportunity for constructive input from those who claim to support the park. The facts about the park's condition speak for themselves. Vale Jones has experienced more police activity, criminal offenses, and ordinance violations than any other park in Huntington Woods. Rule breaking, including smoking, alcohol use, and bikes and dogs in the park happen on a near daily basis. Noise from the hockey rink specifically can be extreme, often reaching inside nearby homes and disrupting surrounding residents' backyards. The park shows chronic neglect. A broken water fountain has gone unrepaired for nearly 3 years. Weeds frequently grow over 3 feet tall despite a city weed ordinance. Litter sits untouched for weeks on end. The porta-john is, for lack of a better word, disgusting. And overall maintenance falls well below city standards. Additionally, safety issues have consistently been overlooked. A 2023 risk assessment from MMRMA identified serious hazards in both the hockey rink and skateboarding bowl, recommending immediate closure of the hockey rink. $20,000 in repairs undertaken have already failed, leaving the hazards unresolved. Prior community surveys reflect these concerns, calling for stricter safety and noise control and showing strong support for imagining the park. Unfortunately, McKenna was unable to make a clear recommendation for Vale Jones Park because the community input was deeply divided. But one thing is certain, change is needed. With its safety risks, poor maintenance, limited accessibility, and ongoing rule violations, Vale Jones Park requires thoughtful consideration and deliberate action to transform it into a safe, welcoming, and well-maintained community space for all. I encourage the City Commission and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board to carefully consider the facts and the realities of the park's use and condition and let those guide any and all decisions about its future. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public participation and move on to the regular items of business. The first item of business is a presentation from Nowak and Fraus regarding residential backyard flooding issues. Are we using that?
Yeah, he's setting it up. It takes a minute to sync. Oh, there it goes. Okay, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brad Rickle. I'm the consulting city engineer for the City of Huntington Woods. And I've been asked by the city to put on a presentation to kind of outline some of the drainage issues and concerns that have been experienced in the rear yards throughout the community. This slide indicates the typical situation that has been encountered. As you can see here, there's substantial ponding, in different areas. The majority of the issue is due to the existing grading that's there. Obviously, soil conditions plays a really big part. It's a lot more prevalent on the west side of the city. So essentially from Huntington Road west, it's more of a clay soil, so it doesn't allow for proper infiltration. Typically more east of Huntington, more on the hill, it's a sandier material which promotes infiltration of groundwater. So that's kind of the issue that we're seeing. The other problem that you run into in these backyards, it tends to be more the low yard of that block, right? A lot of these subdivisions were installed, a long time ago, and stormwater wasn't really looked at as an option or an issue back then. I will say that nowadays it is looked at as an issue with new developments and things like that in communities. So that's generally where you see it, is at the low points in the rear yards. And I did want to say too, is this isn't unique to Huntington Woods by any means. I represent a few communities in the area, and I do a lot of design of these rear yard and these residential improvements for these rear yards. And every other community around you, especially with combined sewer systems, are dealing with the same problem in these communities that didn't have storm drainage systems installed back when they were built. So I kind of wanted to go over some of the potential improvements for discussion that the commission consider, moving forward, starting to get the conversation going on potential impacts that could be utilized to, maybe make a better situation in the rear yards. Some of the pros with putting in some type of rear yard drainage system is obviously it reduces ponding, it alleviates stress on the structural foundations, and the aesthetics of the rear yards and functional. In some of these situations that we've encountered, these rear yards are so flooded over a certain period of time that they're not able to be utilized, for normal, hanging out or having functions in their rear yards. Some of the cons, obviously the biggest one, the concern that most communities have, is the increased sewer demand. So what that means is essentially for however many years you're looking at, up to 100 years the city's been here, there's never been a storm collection system in the rear yards. And so you're taking a combined sewer system and you're adding additional drainage that never went to it. And I'll get into more how some of the other communities around you are addressing that. Obviously, another concern is maintenance with respect to, you know, when things are installed and constructed, you can get sinkhole issues, sediment infiltration into the existing system. But I do want to note that there are design methods that would offset those concerns. And I'll get into that later. And then the other con is, you know, you're not going to completely alleviate the issue unless you essentially regrade a lot of these rear yards and put in a full storm drainage system through all the backyards. You're still going to have issues. The hope is that we can come up with some recommendations that would minimize the impact to those that are really impacted by the flooding issues. So what are some of the solutions that are implemented in our industry? So the first one and the most common is a catch basin. Essentially, it's an open graded system. It usually has a hard pipe. The rear yards are sloped to one point in that yard, and then it drains, you know, out that and connects to a combined sewer system. Another option is a French drain, and essentially it acts as a dewatering mechanism, but the difference is, as you can see, it's surrounded by pea gravel. It's a flexible pipe with open slots in it, and so usually there's topsoil on it because people don't want to see it. So that typically takes a little longer to drain, so it's going to be a little wet, but over time it will dissipate, which isn't a concern. I mean, as an engineer, you want to promote slow infiltration. If you are going to allow connection to a combined system, you want to monitor that flow and restrict that flow so that you're reducing the chances of a surcharge on that line. The last option, which isn't as common, and I'll get into that later, it's a leaching basin. Essentially, these are large underground vaults with, as you can see, perforated holes. So the water would drain to them. It would essentially pond underground instead of above ground, and then it would slowly infiltrate into the soil. The issue with those, and the key issue to address with those, is what are the soil conditions in the rear yards? Because essentially, if you install that type of system, you can fill it with stone and everything around it, and it'll act as a, like I say, a below ground detention area. But the problem is, once they fill up, if it's in a clay situation, it's going to be like a bathtub, right? So it may handle a couple rain events, but then it gets to a point where once it's full, and then if you keep getting rain events, it has nowhere to go but to pond above ground. So those are not as common. Where you do see those are scenarios where, like I mentioned, maybe east of Huntington, as far as like sandy areas. You know, you can install them here. You could probably do a much smaller one, and that would promote infiltration. And I will say the county, this leaching basin is something that the county is really promoting, because the concern is, and what they've been seeing over time, is by taking all this storm water, putting in a collection system, and then it's draining away. What they're trying to promote is groundwater recharge, taking that natural resource and putting it back in the ground. And that's what a leaching basin achieves. However, if the soil's not conducive to that, then it doesn't function like they want to. So what the county does in these instances is they have you do an infiltration test, which is essentially a geotech engineer would do a soil sample, and they would actually fill it with water and calculate how long it takes for that water to dissipate or leach back into the ground. And then at that time, that would size the vault, and, you know, or it would say, you know what, this soil's not conducive to it, so it's not a recommended installation solution. Some of the strategies, so to kind of discuss like a catch basin. So pretty much all the solutions here are low impact. One of the negatives about a single low point structure, not so much with a new build, because when they're essentially tearing down a house, they're regrading the entire area. They can regrade the rear yards to a single point, you know, to allow it to drain. However, where it becomes more complicated to utilize this is in a situation where in its existing home that's been built, you've got garages, you've got substantial vegetation, mature vegetation, trees, patios, things like that. So in order to function properly, like I mentioned, they're essentially one central location. So you would have to pick a point in the yard that's the lowest and essentially regrade whatever area to get to that catch basin. So if you have trees and things like that that you don't want to disrupt, those trees in a lot of these situations are actually blocking drainage. So you still can have drainage issues with that. French drain, once again, it's pretty low impact. I would say another benefit of the French drain that's not listed is, unlike the catch basin, I mentioned you had to kind of regrade your whole yard to go to one area. The nice thing about a French drain is it's a corrugated pipe that you could just dig a trench across the backyard, and typically in most of the backyards, everything will fall to the rear lot line. So you could just put that across the whole lot, and then that would pick up a lot more drainage. So you wouldn't have to do as much regrading in the backyard. But some of the cons is, obviously I mentioned the limited capacity. It takes a lot longer for these to drain because it's draining through a topsoil, a grass, through pea stone and into a pipe, and then typically those pipes are flat. The other con is they're prone to clogging. As I mentioned, they're corrugated, and so when you do have a pea stone, and a lot of times you put a sock around it, that helps with the stopping the sediment from getting into the pipe, but over time everything degrades, and so maintenance on a situation like this is a lot more difficult because it is such a soft pipe. When you go in to maintain it, let's say jet it, you can create more problems there, so essentially eliminating the sediment at a later date is more difficult as compared to a catch basin. You can put in, a lot of times you put a clean out in there, and then a plumber can come in and just jet it and clean the line. Leaching basins, obviously the big pro here is there is no effect on the sewer system. So as I mentioned, the leaching basin does not connect to the combined system. It solely infiltrates into the ground. So you don't have to worry about any additional surcharge to a storm system or combined system. A con is the limited capacity. They are very expensive because they are a large footprint. And then it takes a lot of stone around them. They act much like a French drain, except inverted. And so they're excavating a lot of material out of there and putting stone in. So they are substantially expensive. Just wanted to kind of touch on some of the other cities' approaches, and we represent pretty much all these communities, except for Berkeley, but I also do designs in Berkeley, Royal Oak, and Birmingham, in essentially handling the situations that is being dealt with here in the city. So the requirements of Berkeley, so if you want to put in some type of drainage system, okay, and these are all combined areas within their communities, what they generally do is put in a catch basin, a 2-foot inlet with a sump and trap. A 3-inch restrictor is Berkeley. Essentially what that is, as I mentioned, you're trying to slow the amount of water that goes into the drainage system. Much like you see throughout the city, the roadways all have restricted covers. The intent is, we know that sometimes those back up. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's leaves. But the intent of that is to not surcharge the system so that you're reducing the amount of water into the system at one time, so you're not surcharging and creating backups within the city. Obviously, there is no community that has a drainage system that's designed to handle every storm. I mean, I think everyone here remembers the 300-year storm that was experienced several years ago that had a lot of impact in Southeast Michigan. There are no drains that are designed to that level. So once again, the restrictor is required by Berkeley to reduce the amount of flow in there. And then they have a 4-inch pipe that, what they do is they connect that rear yard drainage system into the existing sanitary lead, is what they do. So the reason they go with the 3-inch restrictor is because you're typically tying into a 6-inch sanitary lead on that house. So that restrictor reduces the flow, that reduces the potential for that sewer backing up into the house. In addition to that, these homes, they put in backflow preventers as a secondary mechanism to reduce the risk of anything backing into the basements. And then, much like all the communities, downspouts are splash-on grade. They're not supposed to be directly connected to the sewers. The idea of that is you want to utilize your green space as much as possible to allow whatever infiltration can occur into the ground can occur, whatever plantings or grass or whatever's there, it can absorb it. So you're reducing the amount that's contributing to the sewer. So no other community allows direct connection to downspouts. City of Royal Oak, they also have catch basins. They do not require a restrictor, but they do have a maximum pipe size of 6 inches. So that in itself acts as a reducer, because when you get a normal, say, 10-year or higher storm event, that 6-inch pipe will surcharge and you'll see standing water in the rear yard. And then they do not tie into the sanitary lead. What they require is, which is more costly, they require that storm tap from a rear yard is a separate connection to the combined system. So if you have an existing sanitary lead that ties into the combined sewer, you have to make a secondary connection. Now, the reason I say that's more expensive is because in most communities, that's under the roadways, okay? So you have to, think about going underground. You have to run a pipe across the sidewalk, across any utilities that are there, cut out the road, dig down, and then backfill and fill it back up, and then repave and re-put in sidewalk. So it is typically significantly more costly. And then Royal Oak actually is a little unique, and they have ongoing discussions. They do not require backyard drainage. So it's more of an option. And when I say that, this is referring to new builds, right? No one's requiring somebody who has an existing home to go back there and put in rear yard drainage. So when I say that the backyard drainage is optional, that's for a new build. And then, like I said, there's some discussions internally between building and engineering because they're dealing with the same issues on some of these new homes that are being installed without rear yard drainage. They're getting, flooding issues, and so obviously there's complaints. So there's discussion of potentially moving toward requiring it on new builds. And I will say both Berkeley and Birmingham do require some sort of dewatering system. Like I said, generally it's a catch basin, but there's rain gardens, there's other things. But once again, when you implement those type, a lot of it depends on the soil conditions, if it's conducive to that design. And I'll get more into that later. In Birmingham, once again, it's an inlet structure with sump and trap, no restrictor, 6-inch pipe, and you have to connect into the sanitary lead. So I just kind of want to show an example of, this is a plot plan like that I've done, and this would essentially be what would be required if, the city decided to open this up on plot plans and whatnot. When we review them, we would review for this type of content. So this red line here represents the rear yard drainage system. So as you can see right here, it's a rear yard catch basin, and essentially it gets very detailed. So this is designed to, and this is a new build, but it's designed to have a restrictor. So as a restrictor, as I mentioned, I'm gonna beat a dead horse here, but it slows the amount of water. So the expectation is there is gonna be ponding in these rear yards. That is something that is important. You cannot fully discharge your rear yard water into the system, because if everybody did that, none of the systems are designed to handle that. So you would essentially put in a restrictor that would allow it to pond, and then they typically would dewater in a 24 to 48 hour time period, and then the water's gone. So that functions much like a detention basin on any new development that you'll see anywhere in Michigan. It's a requirement. So what happens is then it slowly drains through here. As I mentioned, then it connects right here to the sanitary lead. This is the sanitary lead to the house. There's a clean out here that allows it to be cleaned. Now, in this instance, because it was a new build, they put a new sanitary lead in, they had to open cut the road, remove the sidewalk to make the connection to the combined system. But if you're retrofitting existing homes, the idea would be, depending on where their sanitary lead is one of the options is to connect to the existing sanitary lead wherever that may be conducive to that project. And once again, like I said, there's design calculations that are done that, so we can make a determination, and I'm going to try to simplify it, but based on how much rainwater comes over a certain period of time, we can calculate how long that water will take to drain out. And so if it is for like a 48-hour period, that generates a volume that sits above ground. And so the intent is to, on these new builds, is to create an area where that volume stays on your own property and does not overflow unless you experience a greater storm event. And that's the caveat I did want to say, is because a lot of people think that, oh, look, it's draining over the property line. Well, you probably had a storm that exceeds any design requirements that exist. So here's the pretty much 95% of the time, this is what's installed in a combined sewer district. So this is a catch basin with a sump and trap. So essentially what this is, here's where the water drains out. This sump here acts as a sediment location where it all dissipates and falls out. And so you're not getting sediment into the system and clogging the municipal system. It stays inside this area. However, it does need to be maintained. And that's sometimes where the problems exist, is these are installed. People are, doing whatever they're doing, mulch gets in there, things get in there, and then they're never maintained. Some of the communities now throughout Southeast Michigan are requiring, so if you're installing this type of system in your backyard, there's a maintenance agreement that's executed that requires that homeowner to maintain that yearly. There's an engineer would put together like a little plan on, you have to go out and dig out the sediment once a year, or after heavy rain events, just check the cover for leaves and things like that. So that's something an engineer would put together for a homeowner. And then if indeed it becomes problematic and it's not being taken care of, it typically gives the communities the right to go in there and clean it, back charge that resident. So that's kind of where communities are going. Also, what this is a trap, because in a combined system, you have sanitary sewer tying into that. So you have gases and things that are generated from sanitary sewer. So because this elbow exists, this always holds water here. Usually it's about a 2-foot area. So that stops any gas from leaking out through this rim and then having people, within the community smelling that. And then the last but not least, probably the most important thing, is this right here. This is a restrictor, what I was referring to, that limits the amount of water and slows down the rate at which it enters the municipal system. So implementation, and this is utilized in I guess, practice in pretty much all communities around. So, and it's written in their ordinances, the city is not responsible for any backups because of this additional, rear yard contribution. It's impossible to know, and that's a big question that I think us as engineers get. They're like, well, if this is allowed, are we ever going to have any flooding? Well, that's a hard question, right? I mean, there's no mechanism in place for us to make that decision or give you affirmation that it won't, because rain events come at different times, they come more intense, they last longer. I mean, there's so many things involved in that you just can't make that guarantee. The cost of the design review and installation is solely the homeowner's responsibility. And this kind of gets into making sure that things are done properly. So the homeowner is required, if they're going to keep the existing sanitary lead. So this would be like a retrofit, okay? So the homeowner shall have the sanitary lead televised for the location and the condition. The reason that is because the last thing you want to do is, if you have a sanitary lead that's a 6-inch lead, but it's broken, it has roots and things like that in it, and then now you're adding additional water and flow. It may have functioned fine with the sewer flow from a house, but once you're adding stormwater, that's substantially more water than what a house will generate. So what you don't want to do is put that into a failed system, because you're going to have problems with the existing sanitary lead will have problems, and then that could, I guess, flow down to the municipal sewer. So we'd always have it televised, require that it's televised to verify it's in good shape. The other reason for that is, what you don't want to have happen is, say they're doing all this work and then they open up the ground and then all of a sudden it is in bad shape. Well, now it becomes an emergency. So for protection of the property owners, it becomes a lot more expensive if a contractor gets in there, digs everything up, and says, oh, your sewer's bad, now we have to replace it all the way to the main. Well, now you're in a bad predicament, right? So the homeowners now are obligated to pay whatever that contractor wants to pay. I'm not saying contractors always do that, but an emergency tends to, increase cost. So at least there's planning involved. If we know it ahead of time, we as engineers can look at it. We can have a design in place to handle any degradation of the sewer and implement the proper, review process to make sure that it works best for the city and the homeowner. The homeowner would also be required to submit engineering designs for review. The reason that is every property is very unique, right? There's different grade slopes. They're located at different parts of a block. There's trees on some lots. There's fences. There's type of fences. The sewer could be, in their rear yards. It might be out in the road. It could be 6 foot deep. It could be 10 foot deep. So that's why it's very important for us to review something is to have a topographic survey to see how the drainage patterns are and to know what the infrastructure condition is, where it's at, to know how to connect to that to make a successful project. And then the last thing I guess I would mention is in the current zoning ordinance, your zoning ordinance, it specifically states that there is no stormwater connection allowed to the combined system. And that's something that's why this hasn't been permitted in the past, because it's an ordinance issue. So I would defer to the city attorney on how you would go about if you decided to modify or change some of the procedures. You'd have to determine, does the ordinance need to be amended? Is that a variance or things like that? But like I said, those are just things I've noticed, and I would definitely defer to the city attorney. So that's pretty much all I had. Like I said, I'm very experienced in the design and implementation, so if you guys had questions for me, I'm open for that.
Can I recommend something?
Just hold on just a minute. We'll get to the public. Let me start if there are any questions from the city commission on the presentation.
I know there's a lot there. So.
So if we were to change our ordinances and allow the catch basin that connects to the sewer system and a resident did that, would that have any impact on their direct neighbors?
Yeah, potentially. It depends on the rain event. If it's a very large rain event, it could. But the benefit of the sanitary system that's in place in a lot of these rear yards, they're over-designed to accommodate both storm and sanitary flow, okay? So they do have the ability to convey an additional drainage, but at a restricted rate. Now, if you were to every single yard in that whole block on both sides, put in catch basins, so now you're taking that much water, but you're still restricting it, then I would say in those scenarios, you're absolutely gonna have a problem. So it's more of a selective situation where you have to look at it and track where these improvements are being done, where you don't want every yard to do it. You would want, the most problematic here is the low points on the block, or maybe every couple lots install this.
Can I ask a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor? So it sounds like there's two options or things for us to consider from an ordinance perspective. So one would be requiring new builds to put in a solution. Mm-hmm. And then the other would be just changing the ordinance so that residents would be allowed to, residents in current homes not building anything new could then be allowed to do that in their own rear yards.
Correct. At the discretion of the city, though. It would have to be looked at. It's not like it's a given, oh, yep, you want it, you get to do it.
Right, but knowing that there's not a lot of new builds, it's not
Right.
like we're gonna have an entire block of new builds where we
Right.
would then have that issue that you were saying where so many lots in a row are utilizing that combined system.
Correct. And so there has been other communities where you have a situation where you have an entire block that wants this. And what they've done in those communities is they've essentially installed a separate storm sewer that feeds the whole block, so you're not surcharging sanitary, but they're running it to a point where you're tying into a much further downstream sewer that's sized properly to handle that. But the cost of that is very substantial, and I wouldn't envision within the city you would do that. That's typically done if you did a tear down, you know, that's not something that you would do here in Huntington Woods.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
What else? So our current requirements for new construction, which we don't have a whole lot of, but for additions, which we have a lot more of, I know they're required to submit a stormwater management plan that requires the water stay on their property, correct?
Correct. Or overflow into the right-of-way if possible. Typically, it's more challenging when you have interior lots versus corner lots, yes.
Okay. And by making a change, we would be giving them another option to succeed in that.
Correct.
Basically, okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just want to ask a question. There's been some discussion with folks in the city about disparity in height from one lot to another lot, and the role that, if there is a role, that the, whatever term you want to use for it, topography or just how houses are situated, is impacting on, for example, if you have a lot and the house next door seems higher than the other, is that based on what you've seen, not just here but in these other cities? I mean, is that a I don't want to use the term legitimate, because to the person that's having the problem, they're looking for an answer, but is that I guess a realistic assessment of the cause, if you will, or the exacerbation, if you will, of the additional water accumulation?
Yeah, I would say that if you have a steeper yard, it tends to have a greater velocity that the water drains. So more of it will drain off than sit there. So yeah, if you had a flatter yard, there's greater potential for that to stay in the area that it's draining and then infiltrate in the ground. But it's not generating more water, but it's generating more water being moved to one concentrated area of a site. But typically what contributes and creates greater stormwater runoff is, increase impervious area. So the bigger the house, the larger the driveway, the larger the garage, the larger the patios, things like that, right? You have less grass or less vegetation to absorb that water. So as we know, 95% of the water that falls on pavement or everything, part of it goes through evaporation and whatnot, but 95% of it doesn't. It goes into the grass, and it's just extra water versus a vacant lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
In these other communities that you've looked at, the examples that you've thrown up, what does that implementation in the neighborhood look like? And Commissioner Olsman's example, where you have other factors, right, between neighbors, and let's say one neighbor's doing an addition and we're gonna allow them these options now. What does that look like? Do they have to notify their neighbors? Like, walk me through, is there an impact assessment of if they do this, does this impact their neighbor or, but the house behind them, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so typically the way it works, and that's why it's so imperative to have a actual engineered design plan with topographic survey, so we can see the impact. And so what the communities require is, essentially you have to match all four sides of your property, okay, when you're doing a build. And so then any modification of drainage is done on your site, and you're not allowed to take any of your water and move it to someone else's site. So for instance, what you will have in a lot of these communities is, so let's see, this is on a new build, okay? So you're draining from the side yard, you have a driveway, right? So you have a house, driveway, and then property line. So what you'll see if you go to Birmingham, Royal Oak, all these communities, on the new builds, they'll create swales that are essentially just inside your property, that all the water falls from the house, hits these swales, and either drain out to the roadway from the front yards or drain to the back into a drainage system in the back. So you're not allowed to impact other people's drains, other people's property. The problem is, the way the law is written is, so if you do a new development, if you were always taking water runoff, so say you're the new person in town, you're building a new house, and you're the low person on that block. You can't do anything to stop that. You are the low person. Because what you're not allowed to do is, let's say all those rear yards existing drain right to that one lot, okay? You are not permitted to do anything on your property to stop that water from coming. So you have to design to accommodate that water. So it goes both ways. A lot of times these new developers, when they do come in and knock down a house and put in a storm drainage system, they're picking up everybody else, you know, further along the block, water, and helping everybody out by building there. So it's not always a bad thing when developers come in and put a new house.
But it would be the same for existing
Yes.
as well, the same rule is.
Correct.
In theory.
Yep.
That,
So if you had an existing house, yes, you would not, and you wanted to implement some of these measures, we would look at it like a new build, but in the rear, and make sure that your water is staying now on your site. You're not blocking anybody's drainage, you're not creating like a dam around your property, you're not allowed to do any of that. But yes, you would have to accommodate anything that comes onto your property. It would be treated no differently.
okay, thank you.
Okay. We're good. Public participation. You have, please come forward and address the commission, please, with your comment.
Something simple, I mean. The people, you know, that have, people, my name is Shimon, I live on Edin, never mind the number, but I mean, people that have problem with the drainage, you know, the draining water in the backyard standing and what. I recommend something simple. Call the companies, the landscaper, they will aerate your lawn. You will get more air inside and oxygen and all of this. Dry air, hot air will penetrate a little bit deeper. If it's a little bit problem, make it twice a year. And you won't have any more problem with the water, you know, in your yard.
And I'll say to his point, there are some other new technologies that we're seeing out there that aren't necessarily proven, and they're putting on presentations. Essentially what they do is, and I want to say there is a place in Huntington Woods that is actually trying it, a rear yard, where they're running all these little tiny pipes, and what it does is it forces that water down, and then because it is clay, even clay has seams, right? It has layers to it. So what it does is it finds those layers, and then it pushes itself through those small seams throughout. It's being utilized like in Grosse Pointe, right? They have a lot of water issues over in Grosse Pointe. So they have such a high water table, they don't have a storm collection system to pick up any of that. So it's a new technology that we're monitoring, and like I said, it's being implemented. I don't know if it's installed yet in Huntington Woods, but I think one of the new builds propose that as a way to, because we tell them you can't let your water get off your property. So
I have a comment and a question. So I'm Jackie Friedman, Humber Street. So my next door neighbors have a flooding issue in their backyard, but part of it, the bulk of it was created by their behind neighbors, did an addition, then built this huge patio that backs up to near the property line. Then they built up the dirt about a foot and planted a row of arborvitae. So now their backyard floods on a regular basis anytime we get rain. So the question I have is, would their house be somebody that could have this drain system? Also though, our backyard is where our sewage goes out back there, so we live on one of the lucky streets that the lines are in the back of in the backyard. So then how does your proposal work if the sewage drains out into the backyard?
yeah, so essentially in those situations, if the sewer is in the rear yard, we would propose that the connection be made to the existing sanitary lead. Because what you don't want to do is these sewer lines that you're referring to are running along the shared property line. So you have fences, you have all this vegetation, and we've known just from some of the sewer repairs we've had to do in the city, you know, as part of this program, they're costly to get in there, to get a machine in there to make those repairs. So by proposing tying into the sanitary lead, it's much shallower further up in the yard than having to dig way down under somebody's fence, under utility poles, other things like that. So yeah, so in that situation, you would, no matter what, the goal would be to, one of the options is to tie into the sanitary lead.
What is the sanitary lead?
So that sewer that runs across your backyard, so from your house, when you flush your toilets and your sinks and showers, it goes into a pipe and goes out your house. So we would propose that connection made from anything outside with the restricted, so a small hole, so not a lot of water can drain into it, would tie into that sanitary lead.
So the sanitary lead is the main
No, it's the pipe from your house to the main sanitary. That's
Okay.
so there's like a 12-inch pipe that's
Yeah,
runs
we don't
along.
even know what condition that's in.
Yeah.
And I know they just redid the end of our street, they had to dig up a whole
Section.
section of properties and tear down trees
Yeah.
to get the
Because-
new pipes in back there.
Yeah, that pipe was failing. So
Yeah.
the city's been very proactive at helping, reduce the chance for flooding. So that's what that was repairing.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, and I guess my one comment with the city too is we had, it's Hank Berry, right? He was out several times with the property. It never got rectified, so I feel bad. I mean, it's not my property that it impacts it a little bit. There's some standing water by the garage, but with big rain. But my next door neighbors have a serious problem still with flooding in their backyard from the neighbors behind them, just elevating the grade so high.
My name is Jan Weiss Dems. I live at 10804 Lincoln between Scotia and Newport. And we have a new build behind us, not that new, it's probably at least 10 years old. You can see visually that it's higher, which goes against code. And when it rains, they have AstroTurf, and it flows right into our backyard, and we have ducks. And it takes a good 24 to 48 hours for this water to go down. Luckily, it hasn't gone into the basement, but I'm very concerned because this is not anything I did, but I'm suffering from, and they are not dealing with it. And I want to know what recourse do I have, as we get more and more rains. Maybe a few years ago, it went a third into my yard. Now, last summer, it went almost halfway into my yard. And anything I grow in the back just dies because it gets flooded out. And so I'm very concerned about it. I don't know that anything that was done, I'm between Scotia and Newport. I don't know if any of the road being dug up, if any of the pipes put in there is going to help with any of that. But I really believe that this is happening because the house that was built, for some reason, they were allowed to get by without code, and they, it's creating a huge problem for us. And someone came out, I was sent out to the house, I can't remember, he was contract part-time. He came, he looked at it, he asked me some questions, took some pictures, but I never heard anything more about it. And that was the last time I came and spoke about it. So I really see it as something that needs to be addressed for existing homes that are doing this, and also to make sure that any new builds in the city, that you are following the code and that people are not either shoveling money to somebody to have people overlook it, because you're affecting people all over the city by ignoring the rules that are set down. They were set down for a purpose. Thank you.
Hi, Susan Considine again. Again, I hope you guys all have that handout. We laid out the codes. After we came in May, and I think that's what precipitated this, and hearing Brad today, I think maybe we really need a presentation from our city attorney Zalewski about inconsistent and ambiguous enforcement and interpretation of the code. Because hearing now that if I can't build a berm to protect myself from other people's water, that's really questionable. So anyway, I wanted to suggest, I've actually read through all the Planning Commission's meeting minutes for the last 3 years. And again, please, I think it's your job in the City Commission to look up and see what the Planning Commission is doing on these master plan topics. I couldn't find the priority list for 2024 and 2023, but maybe you guys can find it more easily. But I'd like to suggest that Brad come and help our planning commission. We have a lot of new people on there. With number 48, to provide stricter and more detailed regulations on managing stormwater runoff. And then this one, other requirements could include requiring residential properties that add over a certain threshold of square footage to show retention of first flush storm events. Again, I really encourage you to go on Google Maps, aerial view, and look at, one big problem is a lot of people are moving their garages back to the rear setback. So that means now that their garage water competes with their house water in that little postage stamp of grass, unless they can get it all the way to the street. And that's another thing you're going to have to look at. I have actually a good example for you guys to study about a house. It was on a R1E minimum size lot. It maxed out its lot coverage. It exceeded its 50% rear lot coverage. And downspouts were approved in the drainage plan at the front of the garage, and I drove by the house, and the downspouts are now at the back of the garage. So did it get missed in the permitting process, in the final evaluation? Did the homeowner move it after the fact? And so I would like to also recommend that you give training to our planning commission on how to read a survey, your drainage reviews, stormwater management, because I was shocked when they were reviewing properties last time. They were looking at, I said, where's the stormwater going? It's your job. And some of them noted that the gutters weren't even laid out and the downspouts on the plan. So how did that make it past? And then they said they were just trusting that your review was done properly on these houses. So I had to, used to be the planning files were open, but now I have to FOIA them to see what you do on that. I also suggest that you help them really understand their planning checklist. Unfortunately, their checklist is just little spaces. It really should be labeled A, B, C, D, E or something, and help them understand the ones where they would know a proper survey was completed. I'd also like to suggest that you guys review the concrete permit because I got in trouble when a house behind me got a new driveway and they said same footprint, but that doesn't tell you which way the driveway sloped. And so then I got a ton of water. And the way it's read now is unless you're getting a new one, if you're getting a new one, you have to get a survey. If you're just replacing it, the zoning guy can waive it. So, and again, by the way, that drain that you're talking about, which you offered to me, that's 38.63 prohibited connections. So this example I'm going to give you of a home, they were able to get all their driveway water, including their rear house water, which drains directly onto the driveway, is all going to the street. So I think DPW ought to know which houses are draining a lot of rear property water to the street, because maybe they should pay a higher sewer rate than the rest of us who are managing water on our own property. The other thing I wanted to suggest, you're going to have to open up a lot of cans of worms, because in some cases it's you guys didn't go through the permitting process or the approval properly. You didn't. And then sometimes the resident has moved the downspouts later. So you're going to have to open up some cans of worms. And I think the rule of the game should be everybody has to manage their own water. End of story. So, it says in here, provide instructions for personal management. I've been told I need to raise my grade to protect myself from other people's water. To me, that sounds like in direct violation of 6-59 that says no person shall change, modify, create, or establish the grade of any property within the city other than in conformity with this section. And this one says you cannot drain water onto adjacent property. Now, when I asked Hank about it, he said, oh, well, if they've been giving you water for 10 years, you're stuck with it. And I said, oh, is that the law? He says, oh, yeah, or I call the attorney. So your planning commission is trying to figure this stuff out. Please check in, make sure they're doing something on this master plan. We paid $40,000 for it. I know we got a grant, but I don't think we're going to get very far with that RRC if we're not actually implementing it. So that's very frustrating to hear you say that you're stuck with other people's water. One thing to look into, I know Commissioner Elder asked about what other communities are doing. Ann Arbor, I saw Ann Arbor and Oak Park are creating a program where residents will install some sort of stormwater management program, but they have to prove how much water they're managing. So like if their garage, they have to calculate how much water is it producing, and, you know, a little rain barrel ain't gonna handle it, so I'm gonna put in this. So I have a lot of other stuff I could tell you, because like even things our own people said, Blake Moore. Are we effectively asking for either you or for planning or whomever a huge amount of hassle when the neighbors are like, they've been dumping their stormwater on me for 20 years? So I would love to have a presentation by you sometime. Maybe you, Brad, and Hank could, Hank did a very nice training for the new planning commission on being able to read blueprints. I think they ought to be able to read surveys and read their drainage reviews and like draw little arrows. Where is the water going? Because they can look confusing. So I probably said enough, but I'll keep coming back. So I'm going to give you all some copies of this house. Look at it. They get to drain all their water to the street and put their downspout on the concrete. How'd that happen? And how'd the downspouts get moved to the back? That's what happened to me. Somebody moved their downspouts later. You know, make sure the plans, if it says a drip edge, better be a drip edge. If it says the downspouts are in the front, it better be because they're going to get them away from the neighbor. But we need a lot of overhaul, so I'd also recommend like a shredder, a focus group to listen to people, because a lot of people are spending tens of thousands of dollars to put in structures to manage other people's water, and that's not fair. So, thank you.
Can I say a short story about the water I can find? After the bottom line in my street. Either way, an old lady, you know, goes to hell. She enters hell. Everything is green, birds, trees, flowers, and all of this. Then she comes to the guy, you know, responsible of hell, and said, "What's going on?" They told me I'm going to hell. I will see only fire and sandstorm and all of this. I said, "No." A year ago, we had an Israeli delegation expert in water, you know. They put underlined water, and since then, everything is green here. But I have to say, in my street, the slope goes to front of my house from the two sides and the neighbor house. And each time we get heavy rain, it's like Venice. I don't complain. I go outside with my shovel, my rake. I open it and all of this, and I clean it, and I hope everybody in my neighborhood is happy, you know, instead of going, you know, in this kind. And the water drained. And I have to say to everybody, you know, the topography in Huntington Woods is, we didn't create it, you know, God created it.
And structures are alterations to natural drainage.
Al Stack, 13108 Talbot. Brad, have you seen that report by Don Carpenter on stormwater management for the city? It's on the city's website under the environmental sustainability. Excellent report telling the city exactly what it should do in terms of managing stormwater management in the streets and parks and so forth. Excellent resource. Fortunately, nothing's been done, which is sort of a theme on almost every city commission meeting I attend. I do just want to stress, one, is I want to thank Susan for the incredible work she did putting together this packet of resources for anybody who's dealing with stormwater management, flooded basements, flooded backyards, and so forth. So these are available thanks to Susan. If you need some, I have plenty of them.
Please address the commission.
I got a what?
Please address the city commission.
You have to address us.
Oh, well, you already got yours, right?
Mr.
So,
Stack,
yeah.
to address us.
I'd be
That's the
happy
way the
to.
rules
I'd be happy to. But I can't talk to Brad? Ask him a question?
You should talk to us.
Oh.
And pose the question. Go ahead.
Okay, well, the question is more of a statement than a question. Is that okay? Great. The statement I've sort of already made. The point is that the city has a detailed plan on how to manage stormwater management outside of people's yards, and yet you have not implemented it. I doubt you've even looked at it. And I find that half of the problem. It's not only a crisis in terms of what people are spending literally thousands of dollars to save their backyards because you have not done your job, but it's also the fact that you're not doing what should be done for the city in terms of managing stormwater runoff in the city, on the streets, and so forth. So really, I have to apologize. But as you get older, your tolerance for incompetence and mismanagement is very difficult. So thank you.
Any other comments? I think you,
Gail Kovac and Boardman. I've lived here for 43 years, grew up here. I find that the ordinances are there, but nobody pays attention to them. So in my case, I'm on a corner, Boardman and Scotia. My neighbor next to me, when it rains, she gets, I don't know, ankle deep in the backyard, and that's where they actually currently fix the sewer line and everything, but she gets it. And I realized why she was getting it, so the two of us that are on both sides of her, we get a lot of water. The house behind her, they at one time, and I don't even know if they pulled a permit, that's another thing. I live in an area and there's so much going on that nobody is pulling permits, and yet nobody seems to really care that nobody's pulling permits. They're redoing houses inside and all kinds of stuff, and nobody, if you do it on the weekend, you could probably get away with a lot of stuff.
We have code enforcement on the weekends.
For
that express purpose.
Your code enforcement came out because of this situation. Because I talked to Hank and he said, I'll send him out. So he came out, I said, he can see it from my side. The house, kitty corner from me, dug out, I don't know what they dug out in their yard over the years. And their yard is about 3 feet tall behind their garage. So they took all their dirt and they stuck it behind their garage, so it goes down like this, and my neighbor's yard floods, which then overcomes ours. Code enforcement officer comes out, he says, I'm really sorry to tell you, but there's not much we can do. We're not gonna go there and tell them they have to clean that up. You're gonna have to live with it and build a berm. He told me to build a berm. I looked at him and told him, you know what? You're not really helpful. What good is that? Enforce it. If somebody, when I was younger, you couldn't do jack squat without that code officer coming around and walking up to your yard and asking you what. If they saw you pulling cabinets out of your house, he came up and asked you, what are you doing in here? We want to come in and see what you're doing. You're throwing cabinets out. That doesn't happen. I could list houses where they've redone the inside. They've added all kinds of stuff. And so I've decided, if anybody wants to really do anything in their house, do it on the weekend when there's nobody around. And I guess when I grew up, neighbors sort of tattled on people. Now everybody does their own thing, but there is a lot of stuff you guys don't even see that goes on. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to have rules and ordinances when nobody, but for your code and officer to tell me to build, well, you'll have to build a berm. I just sort of looked at him dumbfounded and said, oh, so now we can build berms. So I'm not sure your code and officer, I'm not really impressed with him. And if he only works part-time, okay, because he told me, well, I'm only here part-time, so I can't see everything that goes on. So I'm not really impressed. Thank you.
I think, Susan, you've used up your 3 minutes plus, so thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Brad, thanks for all the information. I think we will continue this discussion and keep working on a good solution for the community.
Thank you very much.
Item number 2 is is consideration to approve the Gillum Recreation Center and Library room rental rates as presented.
What do you want to do this?
We want to,
Make a motion?
yeah, Andrew, do you want to
Andrew, you
review
wanna
where we're at on
address
the,
room rates?
Yeah, I can address it.
You want to move over and sit here?
No, it's okay. So after the last meeting, obviously I was instructed to readdress or look into other municipalities and try to get a better perspective on what the fees have been. So myself, the director of the library, and the director of Parks and Rec, we sat down and we reviewed Auburn Hills, Bloomfield Township, Ferndale, Grosse Pointe, Rochester Hills, Troy, Royal Oak, Oak Park, and Berkeley. With all those different communities, there's different things to look at. You know, there's different, some have assessments, some of the tax bases, obviously they're different, so it's very difficult. So what we tried to do is try to get as close as possible to compare it to Huntington Woods and the size of our rooms, square footage, occupancy, things like that. And then we came up with the pricing, and actually it's average or below average to most of those communities. As I said, there'd be some that were really high, some were low, some were in the middle, and it depended. Like with the libraries, some of them were assessments, so there wasn't any cost. But as you can see with our library fees, they're very low, and we really didn't change, barely increase those. The Knox room is only $30 for 3 hours. The gallery is $50 for 3 hours, so very reasonable when you compare it to other libraries that are similar. The full gym at $400, the half gym at $300. Those are obviously very large rooms, so those rooms, if rented for a large event, whether a family event with say 100 or 200 people, however many they would have in there, the setup and tear down and clean would be extremely, would take several hours and be more difficult in regards to doing that. So that's why those prices are the full gym at $400 and half gym at $300. And then some of those, obviously the gym, however, you still have hourly rates for the gym. When we have open gym, it's free to our residents, our children that go in there, so that's still free. So we still have that. This is only when it comes to you renting it for some type of an event. And then outside basketball teams or volleyball teams that are outside of Huntington Woods that come in and use it, they would then pay that $400 a month for the full gym or $300 for the half gym. The municipal room is $200. That's with the setup and cleanup. We did change that. That if the staff was to do that, it was $200. If not, it's only $75 for the renter if they do the setup and the cleanup and the takedown. Now, the only reason why we allow it in that room, it's a smaller room. The tables and chairs are in there. There's not a real concern as far as liability like there would be with the gym and the half gym. The warming room is $200 also, and same thing goes for the warming room. $70 if they do the cleanup, set up, tear down, and clean up. And as you know, the seniors room is still free. And that's where we came up with the rates. They're really not that much higher than they were in the past.
we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Second.
Okay. Public participation.
My name is Francina Grafe, and I am the current president of the Huntington Woods Study Club, and it is on their behalf that I'm here. For decades, this group has been a cornerstone of our community, offering a place for some of our most senior residents to gather, to learn, to stay connected with their neighbors, and to find joy and purpose each month. I think perhaps last time you heard them say that our combined ages is 3,385 years. Now we have to add another year to that. This club is more than just a meeting. For many of our members, it is one of the few consistent opportunities to engage with friends, combat loneliness, and feel a sense of belonging. We regularly bring together more than 50 seniors, a number that speaks to just how vital this program is in keeping our older residents active, connected, and supported. We are very concerned about the newly implemented room rental fees, and I'm glad to hear that it might be a little different than what we thought it was, but I still feel the need to talk, because last year we didn't pay for the multipurpose room at all. So we're concerned about the rental fees and the policies. For a small, relatively small in the city, senior-run group like ours, these costs are difficult to absorb. For many of our members, it is simply not possible as they are on fixed incomes. Many of them have health issues that take a tremendous amount of money, and I don't think I need to say more about how difficult that is. The heartbreaking reality is that these new fees may force us to leave the very city we have loved, lived in, and served for so long in order to continue our club. This would be a terrible loss, not only for our members, but for the community as a whole. The study club has given back to Huntington Woods for decades. We were the founders of the library, which we continue to support, and we have proudly supported the community initiatives such as the rec center, parade, youth programming, and an annual scholarship to a Berkeley High School graduating female senior, because we're the women's club, and we're all women. We want to continue to engage in the city, but with limited funding, the new fees might make it very difficult for our club. We are asking for consideration of our situation so that we can continue to exist as we have for so many decades. Our seniors have spent their lives building the city into the welcoming community it is today. They have invested in it, cared for it, loved it, and raised their families here. Now in their later years, they simply ask to continue gathering here without financial hardship standing in the way, not because we are old, we are, not because we are women, we are, but because we too matter. Please don't let this be the end of such a long and meaningful chapter in our city's history. We ask you to show compassion and preserve a space for our seniors to continue thriving together right here in Huntington Woods. Thank you on behalf of the Huntington Woods Study Club.
Hi, my name is Lori Lisi. I live at 13110 Hart. And I want to comment on the room rental rates. I really appreciate the fact that there was a change for being willing to set up and take down the tables. That is helpful. I guess I just had maybe two questions. One is why there is no 3-hour option for those rooms at the gym. Because for our group, I represent also the Democrats of South Oakland County. We would not need the room longer than 3 hours to set up, have our meeting, and take down. And I don't know if that would allow for a cheaper rate. And also, I had suggested, I don't know when the women's study group meets, but if there are rooms that are more open in the day and groups meet in the day, I don't know if there could be a much lesser rate for them, because my group only would want the room in the evening, and I would think there'd be more need for the rooms at that point. So those are just my two questions about how you came up with this, but I do appreciate the put up and take down lower rate. But I think we can all agree that one of the most important parts about having these rooms is to build community. So I hate it when I hear about anybody who feels like they maybe couldn't build community here because of our rates. Thank you.
Hello, I don't have anything prepared today. Jackie Friedman, I live on Humber Street. I just want to thank you for the time that you've put into all of this, and it's appreciated. And I think the purpose, and I want to reiterate, is that we don't want carve-outs for groups to be able to utilize the city spaces that residents pay taxes for to utilize and have a certain rate, and then have certain groups that don't have that rate. I think it needs to be consistent across the board for everybody and not have carve-outs for groups. Thank you.
I will say the last thing, if I can say. You know, we live in a 1 square mile. There are no industries, no businesses, no nothing to support this city. And I want to say, a lot of the residents, you know, of this city are retired, live on Social Security, on our saving. And I want to say it's a little absurd to see every year, you know, the taxes going up and up and up and up and up. And it's very hard. I don't want it. It's one of the most beautiful places to live, I have to say, you know. But people want to stay here and enjoy their life as much as they can.
I guess maybe I close the show. Gail Linden, Concord, Huntington Woods. Be it noted, yes, I am concerned with the room rental rates. That's what it said last time in the minutes, and I'm up here saying it again. I thank you for looking at the rates around. I've also done that and done some study of it. Most of those cities are much bigger than Huntington Woods is, and we're small, and we have a great community, and that's why we all live here. I've lived here since 1957. I've seen the library built, I saw the pool go in, and I love this community. I'm not going anywhere. I'm one of this Huntington Woods seniors that gathers on Sunday in the rec center, in the senior lounge. We sort of call it a coffee klatch, yet there's no coffee there. There isn't even a coffee pot there. And when we outgrew the space, because the room only accommodated 17 people, we moved to the warming room. We're smaller now and we're back in the senior room. But I see on those Sundays that there are birthday parties that are held for little kids in the multi-purpose room, and maybe for a half an hour or an hour, they'll rent the gym and they'll have some activity in there. By pricing the gym at a 5-hour or a half gym at a 5-hour, slot, you're cutting out these parties, not helping the residents encouraged to use the facility. I said this the last time, the sliding scale, and many of you said that you were in support of it, was, really something that you need to look at, for the full gym and the half gym. We're not the men's club who take the whole building and we have it for the whole night and the next day or whatever else. But there are people that have not just bar mitzvahs or gatherings or whatever, but they have a 1 or 2 hour event, and you're cutting them out of getting those spaces to use, and they're otherwise just sitting empty. And by raising the rate to $400 or $300 for 5 hours, you're just not allowing them to use it at all. And I think that you need to think carefully again about that. I take it that your $75 fee for the warming room and the multipurpose room is that the tables are there and that whoever is doing that event will set them up and take them down and just leave them there. But, again, that's a very good fee as far as that is concerned. But the gym timing or whatever else in 5 hours, you really, really need to evaluate what your community needs the recreation center for. It needs it for small events, not for 5 hours, and to have a sliding scale for that. Thank you.
One more quick question. How many people does the senior room accommodate? Does anybody know?
What's the question?
The senior room, how many?
17.
Okay, thank you.
17%?
That's
Or more than this.
Okay. Any other comments? Comments or questions from the commission? Or the city manager?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, in regards to what the lady was just saying, if they're ever having an event or birthday party, The 300 and the 400 are for full rentals. The playing of basketball are hourly rentals. So in other words, if they're having an event there and somebody didn't rent that for a huge function, they can play basketball. It's for setup, so they can go in there and play basketball just like when we have open gym. So there's no additional cost for them to do that. They just can do that. They may have to rent for that hour to play basketball. In most cases, during the day, those kids' events are during the day and it probably would be available. In regards to the 3-hour question, or why not 3 hours instead of the 5, when it is a setup, it doesn't matter if it's an hour or it's 5 hours. You're paying because we have to bring in 2 people to do a setup, a tear down, and then a cleanup. So it has nothing to do with the amount of time. That's why we just have and the other thing is usually for a day, they're only renting it that one time for the day. So it doesn't matter how long they stay. It has nothing to do with the cost.
So let me ask this, if a resident is renting the multipurpose room for a birthday party and they want to reserve half of the gym for half an hour during their rental of the multipurpose room, because they want to make sure it's available for their
Yes.
no setup, just
That's right.
playing gym and whatnot.
You can rent it, you can still, that's the hourly rental, just like we do. Yes, you can rent that. You won't pay $300 or $400 because there's no setup or tear. It's not an event.
Right.
So
So
yes,
what
they
is the
can-
hourly rental for the half gym?
You don't have it on
Which
there.
again, would be free if no one was renting it. They
Yes.
could just use it for free, but say
That's-
they wanted
that's
to
right.
make sure it was reserved for them.
It's very reasonable. I don't have it in front of me.
It used to be $100.
No,
But there is an option there for that.
that's right. There's an option for hourly rental of that, the old, whatever the rate. That rate was not increased. So, and as you just said, if it's not rented, if they want to take that chance, well, they would know ahead of time, then they could just go in there and play basketball for no cost at all.
Not usually basketball.
Or, I mean, whatever.
They might have roll-ups or something like that.
Yeah, as long as they're not putting tables and chairs and things
Andrew, I
like
have a
that.
question.
Yeah.
So is it, this is meant to outline the rental costs for all of the spaces that are rentable.
Yes.
So it would really be beneficial to make sure that that hourly rental of the gym was also outlined as one of these cost options. Because I didn't know that it was available for, hourly rentals. So I think it would be really nice. And looking at some of the materials that residents had sent to us since the last meeting of other cities who sort of have a published list of all of their various fees and things, I thought that was really lovely and would be something that perhaps could benefit us as a city as well to have a document like that exists for the public. So I think it'd be really nice to make sure that whatever gets approved, published, also is inclusive of all those other rental timeframes that exist today.
We can absolutely add that, and there was no change to that fee, that's why it's not on here. That wasn't part of, because we were looking at the rental. So that fee was not altered.
I just want to say about the rent, I justify the payment for the rental for one thing. If you bring people in all of this responsible, they make holes in the wall, they break windows, the maintenance costs a lot of money, and you cannot ignore that. You want a nice place, you have to keep it nice. If you break it, you have to fix it. What can you do? Everything costs money in this world.
The other thing I was thinking about, Andrew, in response to the questions about the children's birthday parties, if perhaps that, along with the Parks and Rec staff, if maybe something could be put together as like a birthday package as a rental option, whereby if you're renting the warming room or the multipurpose room and you wanted to like add on that time in the gym to make that another pricing option. And so whether or not that's something that would be getting approved today might be a nice a way of putting together pricing that is amenable to some of those small children's birthday parties, as the example that was brought forth by some residents.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, point of clarification. So if I'm a resident, these rental rates are just for those rooms that I want to 100% secure and reserve, so nobody else can use it. But if I'm a resident and I have a group of people that want to gather as a community for a club, that's like a private club, then I and my friends can just show up and use whatever space is available as kind of rolling the dice on that,
If the building's open.
if the building is open. Is that something that then, like in practice, would I be able to call ahead and check the availability?
You'd be able to call if there's nobody
there's-
renting the room. However, there would be no setup, takedown, or cleanup. You'd just be in the room.
Right.
So that, as far as chairs and tables and things of that nature, but if there's nobody in there, just like they do now, anybody can walk into any of those rooms.
Right, and in the case of the senior room, it's not applicable at all. It's
Well,
not
that-
rentable.
No, it's free.
Right,
Then there
it's
are
not
chairs and
rentable.
tables
It's not in the
there.
rental policy,
No,
rental rates policy.
It's not rented.
Correct.
People just walk in there whenever they want. There's chairs and, permanent chairs and tables in there, and they go in there, play cards or whatever they want. It's
Okay,
Part of the
so,
rec center.
so I'm understanding clearly that you're kind of taking a chance if you want the room, you can rent it, but you have to pay a fee. And if you don't pay the fee to rent it, then it's still potentially available. Not those rooms, but,
If you
is
don't
that, you know what I'm
secure it,
saying?
yeah.
That's what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understood.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is considering approving the quote from Lindsay Painting and Decorating for the painting of all the city green light poles. Light poles or street poles, or both?
Well, they're all the green light poles, and there's some are just lights all the way around the rec center, just has the lights that are secured to the building. There's approximately 70 of those. So the
Okay.
cost, when I factored in with a contractor who was not bidding on the job, was a lot higher than with this cost. So this is an excellent price for one of our painters that we've used here before, a minority company that we've used, Lindsay, who actually painted public safety. So this cost is extremely reasonable. It would cost me more to have a DPW paint these than what we're paying here. I was very happy to see this when I got the quote.
Okay. This is in the amount of $10,510.
Yes. So everything down Scotia Road, everything at the library, everything around the pool, everything in the parking lot, at the city offices, all the green poles would be stripped and painted, primed and painted, green, the hunter green.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission?
Sorry. There are also like poles along 11 Mile. Is that inclusive of the 11 Mile light poles?
There's 70 of them altogether, so I would assume that anything that's green is getting painted.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. Really appreciative of the leadership that the city manager has taken. I think just the capital improvements that we've seen on Scotia alone, the really good call on the brick paver cover, that, and identifying, this is a very proactive thing that you're suggesting. Also preventing rust of, these light fixtures, but, I was at the pool this summer and one phone call, a couple of comments from pool goers, one phone call to the city manager because the lights weren't functioning. It was kind of an embarrassment because here we have this nice pool, and Andrew was all over it. on like the next day. So just compliments to you on that. And I think these kinds of proactive measures that address potentially issues as a result of deferred maintenance, which we've seen at the pool, I think this is really important. You know, it may just seem like, oh, it's a nice thing to do, but this is about taking care of our property, our shared property.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one little comment to the crosswalks that go across Scotia. Really nice look, but they are, I want to let everyone know, they're not actually brick.
Yeah.
They're stamped concrete, so we don't foresee the issues that you a lot of times have in Michigan with brick crosswalks. Hopefully, these will hold up to the test of
We have a
Michigan salt.
Yeah, 5-year warranty on those.
Yes,
That's a good sign.
but it looks really nice, yeah.
I just want to say, for years, I protested the city, the workplace, why they don't have reflections at the stop sign and the inside. Thanks God they couldn't. And I was very mad, I protested, when they changed the sign of the street and they put you have to read it with microscope. They said, you change them now and everybody can see them, but we had friends coming to our house. They all got lost, you know, they couldn't find the places.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 4 is considering approval of a resolution setting alternate meeting dates for the July and December board review meetings. Ethan, you have.
This is part of our new assessor coming in. He's identified a few things that needed to be changed, and this resolution does not interfere with the current statute. It's just giving us more flexibility to schedule board of review meetings at more advantageous times. For example, right now, the board of review meetings for March are like until 10 o'clock at night. Well, no one really wants to come and argue their property tax values that late. So they're just going to try to make it a little more accessible to residents. So that's what this resolution allows for.
We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment? Commission, questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. City manager's report's not on the agenda, but we're still going to give you a chance.
Okay. Well, just some updates. Newport construction is still scheduled for completion in October. You know, being that it's sewer and roads, it's a very difficult job that they're doing over there. And same thing in that now that that Scotia's completed the traffic light at 11 Mile in Scotia, they're well on their way to get that up and running. That should also be done by October. But just remember, we were waiting for Scotia to be completed. The entrance from 11 Mile into the city offices will be no more. That will actually be a grass median, and there'll be only one way into the city offices, which will be up on Scotia. That was another reason why we moved the city box next to the mailboxes, so you're not going to have to pull in and drop off city business into those boxes over there anymore. So the box was moved by the mailboxes, so that'll be more convenient for you. So if you drop your mail in any city business you have, it'll be right next to it there. It's there right now. Unfortunately, I talked to this school. Burton project is almost complete, but they're concerned it may not be complete by the start of school, which may be an issue for parents going to and from the school with that construction on Adine. However, it won't be very long. They'll be very close to that completion. Might be another week or so, and that'll be completed. And other than that, the Woodward crews, I've been here 11 years now as a public safety director, and I'm amazed how well we work together with all these agencies. The amount of police officers from Royal Oak and Huntington Woods and Berkeley and the Sheriff's Department, even from Waterford, Macomb County, we had so many police officers there with covering a million people at that event. And I'd have to say, other than a few medical runs, there were no serious incidents. We had drones, we had cameras, we've had, it was just amazing how many law enforcement officers we had. And the networking with the federal government too, as far as information and intelligence for things that were going on. The camera system we set up to look for suspicious activity, it really worked well. The chiefs were all on a separate channel that we could communicate during the event, so all Friday night, all Saturday night, and I was very impressed how well it went this year, and I thank all the officers from our department and all the agencies, the great job that they did, and I was so happy to know that everybody had a fun event, other than the residents that have to listen to the noise, but the event itself was very well attended, and it was a good event. And then lastly, we're struggling to find crossing guards. Again, we had 3 crossing guards that retired, so anybody willing or interested in being a crossing guard for this school year, please call Public Safety and ask for Lieutenant Spencer, and he will direct you on the positions that are available. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the City Commission for the City Manager?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, Andrew. About the Burton construction project. So it ripped up all that parking, and my understanding from talking to Hank is that sort of the school district gets to do what they want to do on their property. So do we have a sense of whether parking will return to Nadine?
Yes, there'll be parallel parking there on Nadine, because there'll be a cutout. And then the teachers, what will be nice is the teachers, they've increased parking then, so all the teachers will have a parking spot, so nobody will be parking at the rec center parking. So there will be, still have parking on Nadine, yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
No comments.
Commissioner Elder?
I just want to thank the residents for their patience this summer with the construction. I think we did it, and we're there, and just a few more streets to go.
Commissioner Steiner?
Yeah, just regarding the water main break that happened on Nadine last night. Was it last night? Yesterday? So there was also one in Berkeley, right off of Berkeley. And then the workers told some residents that there were a lot of other water main breaks happening in other cities nearby, and there was some concern about whether or not this was in relation to the water, like Great Lakes, whoever provides the water, if it was like a pressure issue, that it was something that seemed like an anomaly to them. So I hope that that's something that DPW is looking into, because it. The folks out doing the work, talking to the residents, were implying that perhaps this was a very unusual incident. And so if there was something sort of beyond just the age of the water main itself, it might have gone into creating that water main break.
It's possible. I'll have to check with the DPW. And however, I did see the photographs of the water main, and it definitely was deteriorated, broken down. I mean, it was definitely, there was a long crack in that pipe. So, but there could have been a water hammer with all the construction, things like that can cause that too. That's true. It's very possible.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Public participation has been closed, Mr. Stack. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.